Imagine for a moment, if you could sit down with the wisest man who ever lived, the man who spoke directly to God, who ruled an entire kingdom solely through the power of wisdom, and ask him, "What do I need to do to change my life today?" That's exactly what you're about to find out. King Solomon, author of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, left behind a spiritual map that many ignore. A map capable of saving relationships, unlocking decisions, protecting your life, opening paths, and above all, to avoid unnecessary suffering. And today, you're going to learn 25 powerful lessons, selected word for word, that will transform the way you see life. And perhaps, yes, perhaps, unlock exactly what you're looking for. But before we continue, if you believe that biblical wisdom is still a light for our times, leave your like right now. This helps this content reach more lives. And if you want to receive videos like this one, full of revelation and wisdom, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, you learn the Bible in a profound, simple, and transformative way. Now, get ready, because lesson number 1 has already brought down empires, and you can change your story today. Solomon's first lesson is not just a pretty phrase. It's a spiritual key. He says in Proverbs 9 verse 10, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." But this phrase, so often repeated, is frequently misunderstood, because Solomon isn't talking about fear. He's talking about recognition. He's talking about putting God in the right place, above your decisions, above your emotions, and above your circumstances. And here's the point that almost no one realizes. When Solomon writes this, he's not giving a personal opinion. He's revealing the foundation of everything he experienced. Prosperity, peace, dominion, intelligence, discernment. It all began there, in recognizing God before recognizing anything else. And perhaps that's exactly the lesson many people are missing today. Because we live in a generation that consults friends, consults the internet, consults feelings, but doesn't consult God. And the more we ignore this spiritual order, the more confusing life becomes. Solomon shows us that wisdom is not intelligence, it is not experience, it is not study. Wisdom is alignment. It's when you decide you're not going to make decisions alone. It's when you say, "Lord, if it doesn't come from you, I don't want it." This is where everything starts to change. Solomon knew that without this fear, which is reverence, dependence, and spiritual priority, any structure crumbles. And this applies to relationships, career, finances, daily choices, and even the thoughts you nurture. And look how powerful this is. The Bible doesn't say that the fear of the Lord is the means of wisdom. It says it's the beginning. In other words, if God isn't there at the beginning, everything will end wrong. How many times have you made hasty, impulsive, emotional decisions, only to regret them later? How many doors have you tried to force open without direction, only to end up hurting yourself? Solomon cries out to us throughout the centuries. Before acting, stop. Before deciding, seek. Before speaking, listen. Because God not only guides, He prevents disaster. And here's a powerful detail. Every time you put God first, you activate something in the spiritual world that Solomon himself experienced. Clarity. Clarity to see what others do not see. Clarity to understand what others don't understand. Clarity to choose what others would not choose. Therefore, the first lesson is simple, yet profound. Wisdom begins where pride ends. Wisdom is born when you admit that you need direction. Who needs God? He wasn't born to walk alone. And if you understand this first lesson, the other 24 will fall into your heart like pieces of a perfect puzzle. Because now you've already put the first piece in place. If there is one lesson from Solomon that transcends centuries and still exposes the root of our greatest conflicts, it is this: the true battle of life is fought in the mind. In Proverbs 4 verse 23, it states, "Above all else, guard your heart." And in the original Hebrew, heart means much more than emotions. It means mind, thoughts, focus, inner direction. In other words, take care of what no one sees, because that's what will determine everything that everyone will see. Solomon understood early on that a man's downfall never begins with external failure. It begins with a poorly nurtured thought. It starts with the resentment you choose to hold on to. It starts with the comparison you feed into. It starts with that inner voice you never confront. And that is why he says to guard your heart diligently, like someone protecting a hidden treasure. Because, in fact, that's what your mind is, the place where your future is born. And here's something almost no one realizes. Thoughts are spiritual seeds. Everything you allow to grow within you will eventually bear fruit in your life. If you cultivate fear, you will reap insecurity. If you cultivate doubt, you will reap paralysis. If you cultivate bitterness, you will reap broken relationships. But if you cultivate faith, hope, gratitude, and truth, you will reap guidance, strength, and wisdom. Solomon knew the danger of an abandoned mind. He saw kings destroy themselves through decisions made in the heat of the moment. He saw wise men lose their way because of thoughts they never controlled. And that is the most profound part of this teaching. You don't choose the thoughts that come to you, but you choose the ones that stay. How many times have you been dominated by a thought that wasn't even your own? A fear that appeared out of nowhere. An accusation. What if it goes wrong? Or that feeling that you're not enough. Solomon warns us that if you don't filter this out, your mind becomes an open field for everything that steals your peace. And this is striking. Most people today protect their homes, protect their cell phones with passwords, protect social media, but they don't protect their own minds. The most important door in your life is wide open. And that's why so many people feel tired inside, even after sleeping all night. What Solomon is saying is, you need to be the guardian of your own mind. You need to learn how to say, that thought comes in. That one won't get in. I reject that one. I'll replace this one. This is what I pray for. I leave this one to God. Because whatever you think about repeatedly becomes what you believe, and everything you believe becomes what you live. Ultimately, your life is shaped not by external circumstances, but by the internal conversations you allow yourself to have. Therefore, he places this lesson among the most important of all his wisdom. If you don't master your thoughts will master your life. And this is where the transformation begins. Not in the world around you, but in the world within you. Of all the choices Solomon could have made when God asked him, "What do you want me to give you?" he surprised heaven and earth. He didn't ask for power. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for victory over enemies. He asked for discernment. And this decision reveals one of the most powerful lessons in the entire Bible. The discerning person doesn't need luck, they only need guidance. Discernment is the ability to see what lies behind things. It's seeing what others don't see. It's about perceiving the truth when everything seems confusing. It's about knowing when to act and when to wait. It's about understanding that the right decision at the wrong time is still the wrong decision. And that is why Solomon became the wisest man in history. He understood that God's greatest gift is not the answer. It is the ability to recognize when the answer appears. And look how profound this is. We live in a generation that knows a lot, reads a lot, talks a lot, but discerns little. Some people confuse advice with direction, confuses emotion with peace, confuses opportunity with trap, confuses the voice of God with the noise of anxiety. And when discernment is lacking, even a blessing can become a burden, because you don't know what to do with it. Solomon demonstrates this practically when he decides between two women who were fighting over a baby. They all cried, they all talked, they all seemed sincere, but he went beyond words. He saw the intention of the heart. He saw what no one else saw. That's discernment, perceiving what is true when everything else seems the same. And here's a point that directly impacts modern life. A lack of discernment leads you to cling to the wrong people, trust empty promises, fall into repetitive cycles, and waste time on things that will never bear fruit. Without discernment, you become vulnerable to what seems good, but isn't. It sounds nice, but it doesn't transform anything. Something that evokes emotion, but doesn't build up. And perhaps this explains many of the conflicts you've experienced. How many doors have you opened believing they were from God, only to later discover they were merely a facade? How many relationships have you entered out of neediness, rather than for guidance? How many paths have you taken because they seemed easy, only to later realize they were shortcuts to bigger problems? The truth is harsh, but liberating. A lack of discernment comes at a high price. It costs time, it costs peace, it costs emotional energy, it costs health. And Solomon knew this. Therefore, he didn't ask for much. He asked for the essentials. Because those who have discernment find the right path, And those who find the right path don't need to wear themselves out with shortcuts. And there's more. Discernment is not a talent reserved for kings. It is a spiritual skill available today, right now, to anyone who seeks it. And the closer you get to God, the clearer everything becomes. People change, but discernment reveals intentions. Situations change, but discernment reveals paths. The world changes, but discernment keeps you firm. Therefore, Solomon's third great lesson is, ask for discernment above all else, because when you know how to discern, you know how to live. If there is one lesson from Solomon that transcends peoples, cultures, and centuries like a sharp sword, it is this: whatever a person sows, that person reaps. Solomon repeats this principle several times in Proverbs, as if he were warning us about something we insist on ignoring. And, however simple it may seem, this is one of the most powerful spiritual laws that exist. Because she never fails. She is never late. She never gets the address wrong. The harvest always comes, sooner or later. And here's the detail that few people realize. Solomon isn't just talking about big choices. He's talking about everyday life. Small habits. From the words you release, of the thoughts you tolerate, from the actions you repeat every day without realizing it. It's as if he was saying, don't underestimate what you do when no one is watching. Because it's there, behind the scenes of life, that the future is being planted. And this is so profound because we live in an age of immediacy. People want change without process. They want results without discipline. They want honor without character. They want blessings without sacrifice. But Solomon reminds us that God is not impressed by haste. He answers seeds. And this teaching explains why many people live in endless cycles. Because they continue to sow the same behavior and expect a different harvest. They sow disorganization and want prosperity. They cultivate impulsiveness and yet they want peace. They cultivate pride and desire healthy relationships. They sow procrastination and want open doors. They plant harsh words and expect gentle treatment. Solomon calls us to reality. The harvest is no surprise. It's a consequence. And here's a powerful truth. The law of reaping what you sow works for both good and evil. If you plant faith, constancy, discipline, kindness, truth, integrity, you will also reap. And he harvests in abundance. Solomon experienced this. Every choice he made at the beginning of his reign opened doors that no human effort could have opened. Every act of humility attracted favor. Every decision aligned with God released prosperity upon Israel. But he also experienced the opposite. When he turned away from God, when he forged dangerous alliances, when he tolerated idols, the harvest came. And it came heavy. His final experience is a stark reminder. No one is above the law of the harvest, not even the wisest man in the world. And perhaps this is where that lesson touches your life today. Because you may be reaping the rewards of seeds you planted without realizing it. But the good news is that Solomon, even after his mistakes, shows us hope. You can change your harvest by changing your seeds. Nothing is lost. Nothing is decided. What defines your future is not what you planted yesterday. It's what you choose to plant from now on. Therefore, Solomon concludes this cycle of wisdom with a warning and a promise. The righteous will eat the fruit of their actions. In other words, you don't need to fear tomorrow, if today you choose to plant what God approves of. If you've made it this far, one thing is already clear. Wisdom is not an accessory. It's a way of life. And Solomon didn't leave us with loose advice. He left us eternal principles, keys that shape destinies, doors that open for those who choose to live with purpose. You have learned that wisdom begins in the fear of the Lord. The real battle takes place in the thoughts you nurture. That discernment is worth more than any wealth, and that the harvest is inevitable, and it begins with the small seeds of today. And now, you only need to ask yourself one question. What am I going to do with all of this? Because wisdom that is not put into practice becomes mere information. But lived wisdom transforms lives. Perhaps today is the day to adjust your mindset, to change your seeds, to ask for discernment, to put God first again. Perhaps today marks the beginning of a new chapter in your story, because now you have direction. And if this video spoke to you, if something here touched your heart, if you believe that more people need to hear these truths, Leave a like. It helps this content reach lives you never imagined. Subscribe to the channel. Here you will learn the Bible with depth, clarity, and revelation, in a way that transforms you. Turn on notifications, because the next videos will take you even deeper into biblical wisdom. And remember, there is no transformed life without applied wisdom. And there is no true wisdom without God at the center. See you in the next video. May the Lord bless you, and give you wisdom to live each day with purpose.